Hello everyone, you're listening to the Earful Tower podcast. My name's Oliver G. I'm an Australian guy. I've been in Paris for, 4.5 years now, and this podcast is all about meeting the interesting people who make the City of Light shine, and that is no exception for today's episode. More on that in a second. First, this episode is brought to you by French Today. Now, they're audiobooks that they'll teach you French. You'll learn French like a French person. If you want to buy their audiobooks, you get a 10% discount off if you visit their site by typing in www.frenchtoday.com/earful6. 10% off, a further 10% off even. So go and check that out. But today's episode, you know what I'm going to say first is a shout out to a listener. Lexi from Australia, a Patreon supporter, and she got in touch and I met up with her and she said, you know what, Oliver, I love the episodes that are recorded in cafes. It really makes me feel like I'm in Paris. And I took that on board. I think it was really good feedback. And in fact, a handful of the upcoming episodes were recorded in cafes, parks, people's homes, to give you that sort of that feeling that you're sitting there in Paris with us. So there you go, Lexi. Hope you enjoyed this one. And speaking of this one, today's guest is a really fun one. Valli, her name is. We explained the whole story in the podcast, but to just set the mood a little bit, she came to Paris a handful of decades ago, and she was in the first ever French rap song. She was singing in it. Now she works more in radio, less in rap, but that song was an absolute hit, and we sort of tell the story. Well, she tells the story of that and her own story, and just, talking about Paris as usual. Now, I've got a few other guests coming up that I'll talk about at the end of the episode. As always, hang around after the episode because I'm going to be talking about a few emails that I've got. I'll be talking through the French Today stuff. But as for the Valli interview, I really encourage you to listen to the full song, maybe even before you listen to this recording. It'll all be in the show notes. It's really tricky with podcasts and music, but seeming from a journalistic perspective, we're going to be talking a lot about this song. I'm going to have a go at playing maybe 15 seconds of it now to give you guys a taste. If you don't hear from me for a while, it's probably because I've been sued and I'm trying to fix that. But hey, look, this is for journalistic purposes. Here's the song we're going to be talking about, and I'll let that lead in the episode. And the other thing, about 2 minutes into our chat, Valli says something in French, and I didn't translate it at the time, but just so you know, in case you don't speak French, she's talking about when people stop her in the street in Paris, and they say, "T'es pas changé," you've not changed. It means you've not changed. So, that's what I liked about this episode and a few of the upcoming ones as well. Valli is stopped on the street in Paris. A lot of people know her. 2.5 million people bought her record. But back in the States, not the same thing. It's that kind of weird thing of being a famous foreigner in another country, which I love. Anyway, before I get into the episode, one more thing I want to remember is I'm going to go to Giverny, Monet's Garden, on Wednesday. So today's Monday, so in 2 days from now, I'll be in Giverny. Check it out on Instagram. I'll be posting a bunch of pictures and videos, but also if you're a Patreon supporter, I'm going to be doing a live walk from Monet's Garden. So there you go. You got 2 days to sign up. If you're already a member, I'll be putting up details of how to watch it imminently, as soon as I figure out what time I'll be doing it. So now, here is the song Chacun fait ce qu'il lui plaît. Chacun fait ce qu'il lui plaît. Gosh, it's difficult to say for me. And you're listening to the Earful Tower. Let's do it.
Mon Dieu, je peux même pas jouir.
Tant pis pour toi, il faut dormir. Alors je me sauve dans le matin gris. C'est plein de jour et pas de taxi. Les chats qui se tapent le petit ronron. Les éminents, ces petits bateaux. Pour de l'âge pleure, je me sens pas belle. Les bigoudis sont plus remplis.
Okay, Valli, I was going to say welcome to the studio, but welcome to your own house is probably more accurate.
Welcome to my sunny Parisian apartment. I'm glad you're here.
It's such, and we were just talking about this, it is such a lovely apartment.
Thank you.
I'll say it's really, to paint a picture for people, there are sort of, there's a lot of light coming in, there's a lot of green out the windows, and a lot of books on the shelf, and some platinum record, did you say right there?
Yes, I'm sort of being a show-off because I have my platinum record from a single I did in 1981 that came out in France.
And I think that's exactly where we should begin. I think that's a good place to begin. So you listeners at home, we're going to get into French music and stuff, but we're going to begin with with this. Have we already talked about how to pronounce your name, or did I do that before we started?
We talked about it, but it wasn't taping.
Okay, well, let's go. For everyone at home, how do you say it?
My name is Valli,
yeah,
if you're English speaking, but in French, everyone calls me Valli.
Valli.
And the worst thing about having a V at the beginning of your name is that in France, I guess like in Germany, they often pronounce the V as a W. So like for so many years they called me Valli,
Right.
which I totally didn't understand.
Yeah.
Because I'm saying, what do you mean it's a V? Why do they call me Valli?
But they have V's in French, don't they?
Yeah, but everyone saw my name and said Valli, and even on we'll get to it, but I recorded an album, and there's a song that's called Je m'appelle Valli, my name is Valli, and it says Valli, to tell people, because I was just so frustrated, because when I was a kid, Valli isn't a very common name, it's my real name, and so people would call me Valerie. So I come to France and people call me Wally, and I'm like, wait a second, what's going on with this name? So it's strange, but the French call me Valli.
So if a French person stops you in the street today, what do they say?
Valli.
Okay. So
Tu n'as pas changé.
Really? Oh, that's lovely.
Oh, it's nice. I believe them.
Yeah. So one thing that I'm excited about to have you on my show is that you're one of those people that goes by one name. You're in the club with Madonna, Cher, Elton, and Valli.
Elton John.
Yeah, but I think he can get away with Elton.
I saw the film yesterday,
Oh,
Rocket
yeah.
Man.
And?
I loved it.
It's had mixed reviews.
I know, because I think that people will... I followed Elton John in the 70s, as early as 1971. And so I have all his albums from that period, from 1970, his first album, through... I think the last album I probably bought was Caribou.
Right. There's a siren, but that's cool.
It's so rare to hear sirens in this apartment because we're in between two courtyards. Anyway.
But it's okay. But someone emailed me once that there was a siren in another show that I did, and it made them feel like they're back in Paris.
Absolutely.
So everyone's in the apartment with us, Valli.
Yeah. Hey, be careful of that person crossing the street. Anyway, just to finish about Elton John, is that I like the idea that it's a musical comedy. But I think that people might get confused, but there are so many great songs that he did that are reinterpreted and rearranged, and I think the guy who plays Elton John is really exceptional.
Bit of a nostalgia trip to watch.
Yeah,
that.
so I was like weeping as usual when I listen to music. I was weeping, and I'm sure people were looking at me saying, "What is this poor woman crying?" And I love this song. So that's basically me in music. I cry all the time.
Fair
My kids
enough.
are always making fun of me.
What did you think of what was the Lady Gaga one? What's it called?
I liked it. I thought it was a little bit long, but I thought she was exceptional.
A Star Is Born.
A Star Is Born.
Yeah.
She was great.
Yeah.
I'm very fascinated by that person. She's so young. She's so spiritual. She's got an amazing voice. She's a musician. I think that even though I was such a fan of Madonna, same age, she's a little older, by the way, but I mean, basically same generation. I loved Madonna, and I think that Lady Gaga, even though her music I'm not as much of a fan as her music as I was of Madonna's music, I think she's surpassed Madonna in so many ways.
Big call. That's an Eiffel Tower scoop, everybody.
Yeah, I never thought I'd say that about Madonna, and I always thought when Lady Gaga came out, I was like, started being popular. I said, well, she has nothing to do with Madonna, she's copying Madonna. Whoa,
Yeah,
I take it all back.
Talent, yeah.
She's really amazing.
And one thing you have in common with, and not many people can say this, you have in common with Madonna and Lady Gaga is you've got a platinum record.
Absolutely.
And that's what I think we should get onto.
Absolutely.
So let's paint the picture. There's probably a lot of people listening to this in countries around the world who don't know so much about French music.
Right.
And if I were to do the short version, it's that you were part of what I read as the first French rap song.
Absolutely.
In 1981.
It came out in November 1981, was a huge hit in 1982 through 1983. It was a sort of song that you can't get away of. It's on the radio so much that you close the door, it comes through the window. I mean, it was a huge hit, and amazing.
So that's 1981, 1982. That's like 40 years ago now.
Please, when it's that long ago, you don't add on years that don't exist. We're talking 38, okay?
You're right. I didn't know when I'd release this. Maybe I'll release this episode in 2 years. Okay, so we're talking a couple decades ago. Who knows, right? So let's go back and. For context, you're an American woman. You've come to Paris, France. You're French. You thought it was perfect. Now I want you to take over the story. How did you come to sing in French on the first rap song? Because that sounds like an impossible connection there.
First of all, I was always a Francophile from the age of 5, or even before that, when I went to England my father did a sabbatical leave when I was in first grade. If you're an American listener, I was 5. And we got off the boat. We took the Queen Mary. We got off the boat in, I think, Dieppe. got off the boat before we got to Southampton, had lunch, got back on the boat, and then I started telling everybody that I had lunch in France. Have you ever been to France? I had lunch there, which is the truth, but I thought it sounded really cool. Then there was an exchange student at my school. My father was at Yale. He's a professor of medicine, and there was a professor that came. His son was in the grade right above me, and I was like madly in love with this guy, Pierre. And then I've been a Francophile since my youngest age.
Right.
So I went to NYU Film School and started studying, French cinema. And
Is this like university?
University,
Yep.
and New York University. I wanted to be an actress, but I thought, I'll go to school with the directors. Totally dumb idea, but the fact is,
It sounds kind of like a French idea.
It was crazy.
Yeah.
I was thinking afterwards, you should have just gone to goddamn, the dramatic school, at NYU and not thought about this. But in the end, I did meet someone named Philippe Bourgoin, French, who was in my class at school. And he decided to do a movie with the basic scenario was a song that he had written with a friend in the mid-'70s and decided to do this film. The film is about a guy, and this is the song that became the first French rap song that we did when we got to Paris. Is about... It's kind of a crude song. It's about a guy who can't sleep. He's been masturbating, he's been drinking, and decides, I can't sleep, I'm going out.
Right.
So he goes to the Bois de Boulogne, where there are a lot of transvestites, and so he starts sort of cruising around.
The big park to the sort of
it's
west
it's
of
in
Paris.
the west of
Yep.
Paris. It's a huge Bois de Boulogne. It's a huge, beautiful park, but it's also known for the prostitutes, the transvestites. So the guy goes through there and didn't find anyone, stops in a bar, which is also a prostitute bar, meets a blonde, buys her a glass of champagne, and then decides, and she says, oh, well, I'll do what you want for 50 francs at the time.
Right.
So they go to the hotel. He can't get it up.
Right.
So she says, oh, too bad, tant pis pour toi, il faut dormir. Too bad for you, just go to sleep. And then she continues the song.
Okay.
Because it's all cut up on 5 heures du mat, 6 heures du mat,
Yep.
it's 5 o'clock in the morning, 6 o'clock in the morning, 7 o'clock in the morning. And at 8 o'clock in the morning, she says, okay, too bad for you, I'm off. And then she is in the same situation. She can't sleep. She's insomniac, even though it's the day.
Yeah, right.
So this is what that song was about.
Yeah.
And this is what the film was about. So it was quite a dark song.
Right, right.
So when Philippe decided to, let's do this song in rap, because we'd been in New York and it was the beginning of rap, it was the beginning of punk. That's
right.
why the whole New York story sort of is important, because when we were in New York, it was disco, punk, and then rap was sort of floating around. We heard it, we didn't know why. In 1979, Rapper's Delight came out by Sugar Hill Gang.
So we're talking, that's up in Harlem, right?
Yeah, so Sugar Hill is a neighborhood in Harlem, and that's where the woman who had heard this rap going on in block parties and all over the Bronx and Harlem, mostly the Bronx, she had a setup in Sugar Hill in Harlem and decided to name the Sugar Hill Gang because that's where she lived. Anyway, so that was basically the only song that had been out like in '79, and then Blondie did a song called Rapture. So when Philippe Bourgoin came back to France in 1980, and I followed in 1981, he said, "Oh, that would be a really good idea to do the song in rap." He said, "Come to the studio. I want to make sure that that it sounds right." He found the guy who was going to sing the song by calling up someone he knew in show business. Said, "You should call this guy. He's in all the musical comedies. He might be good." He called up this guy named Gregory, who had an answering machine. At the time, answering machines, I'm talking 1981, were not a big thing. People didn't have them.
Right, so that was a sign of being cool.
Yeah, it was all like, oh my God, he has an answering machine. Because every time I went to America, people would say, can you bring me cowboy boots and answering machines? I'd always say no, because it's too big, I'm not bringing it back. Anyway, he had
People wanted you to bring cowboy boots?
They wanted me to bring cowboys. It was the big style in the 80s.
Really? I missed that one.
Santiago, they're called in French.
What are they called? Santiago?
Santiago. Can you bring me back some Santiago, some Levi's?
Yeah.
this is a time when you couldn't get everything anywhere in the world. It was kind of a cool time for
And
that.
what they wanted you to bring answering machines back as well?
And answering machines, because they were so expensive here.
Yeah, right.
But can you imagine me coming back with answering machines in my
You could have started like a black
suitcase?
market business.
Yeah.
Who needs to be a rapper when you can...
Exactly. I probably have made more money, right? Anyway, so he said, come to the studio. I want to make sure we do it right. So he said, and in the meantime, write some lyrics in English, because if you know the song, which I'm sure
I definitely
people
do.
listening,
Yeah, and people,
there's part at the beginning where there's English,
Starts in
and at the end
English,
at the
yeah.
English. So I wrote quickly these lyrics, and then you go to the studio, and so we record 5 o'clock in the morning. I can't sleep, doing in 6, 7, and so Philippe thought, wait a second, that would be such a good idea if the girl, the prostitute in the song, takes the relay and it finishes on her.
Sure.
So he adds on a couple of lyrics and he says, go sing.
Yeah.
I had been in France 6 weeks.
So you'd been in France 6 weeks and you're asked to sing the lines of a prostitute in a rap song, a genre that doesn't yet exist in French.
Exactly.
Cool, that's an interesting part.
Yeah, so it was like, okay, I'll do it.
Yeah.
Why not?
Yeah.
And I think I did it in 2 takes because, for one thing, the lyrics are really incredible. I didn't understand them. I knew basically what it was about, but they're very well written, and there's a lot of slang.
Sure.
Quite difficult to say even today. And it's so funny because when I sometimes do karaoke, people want to sing with me.
Yeah.
They realize that it's not that easy. They
Sure.
think because when this record comes on, I don't know one person from even age 20 who don't know the lyrics by heart because it's
Really?
so well known. So it's like when they realize that when they do it without the voice, they realize that it's not that easy to do.
Well, I'm hoping. Well, the voice. So I'm hoping I'll be able to. It's tricky with podcasts, but I'm hoping I'll be able to play a portion of the song because we're talking about it.
Absolutely, you must.
But sometimes that can get you in trouble. But if we can't, when you say the high bit, that's the sort of refrain is quite high.
Yeah, that's not me though. But people know it.
Yeah.
I mean, apparently they played it in certain clubs in New York, and I know we sold 30,000 records in Germany.
Crazy.
They redid an Italian version, a Flemish version. I mean, it was huge. It was pretty big.
When you're getting played in Germany, French rap in Germany, you're onto something good, right?
Yeah.
So this besides Germany, this sold a lot.
Yeah, it's something like
records.
2,500,000 copies or something.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
And so people let's talk. You've got these. I think this is fun too. I don't want to forget. You've bought what's the word for this?
This is a 45.
Right.
It shows that you're a very young person. This is a single. We used to call them, and it's a 45. It means that when you put it on your turntable, you instead of listening at 33 like you listen to vinyl albums, this is at 45. So you have to make it go faster.
Right.
And so this is what we used to listen to. As far as the vinyl exists, and especially in the 60s when they started in the 50s.
And what you're holding, for the people at home to imagine you're still in the room with us, is Valli, you're holding a 45 that you've bought at, where was it, like a flea market or something?
Yeah, it's so funny because I have a lot, but now that music has become, digital, no one... They say, I gotta get rid of all this stuff, because it's true. You can see, because you're in my house, that I have a lot of vinyls.
Yeah.
Takes up an amazing amount of space.
Sure, yeah.
But people are saying, okay, now I'm listening to MP3, I'm listening to on digital, I'm listening to all the streaming.
Yeah.
So they get rid of everything, and so now it's so funny when I go to flea markets or yard sales or. I go through and I easily find it because it's a pink cover, so I can usually see it just by overlooking the whole
top bit
pile.
with the lines on it.
And so I just decide, why not buy them? It's kind of fun to have a whole bunch of them.
What?
And now my friends do it because they've seen me do it when we go to flea markets.
Well, it's funny because it's like, when someone's done something that's like embarrassing, like there's naked images of them out there, and they go and buy every magazine so no one else can. It's kind of like it almost feels like that to me. You're trying to buy out the whole country of them.
Exactly.
And then you could sell it, and then it's like the diamond trade. If you have them all, they become a lot more valuable.
But the thing is, there are 2,500,000 copies out there, so I don't know how rare these are
that's a good point.
but I just think it's really fun to buy them. And plus, as I show you this one, it's like, it's in francs, 19 francs 50 to buy this single in a store. So it's kind of fun to see. It's very nostalgic, and I don't know why I buy them. It's just fun, to own it again. And sometimes I sign them and give them to friends, and they're always so happy because. Yeah. For people who didn't know me at the time, it's just people always ask me, people I work with say, "Can you sign my single?" I say, "Okay."
So even just you bringing up work, and I'm thinking about, you said a French word just before. I've got about 10 things I want to ask
Okay,
you. And
tell me,
I'm
ask
worried
me.
that time is going to run away. But there's also this,
So this album, this single did such a good job. It was so unbelievably popular. People discovered what rap was. It was a song in French. I don't think that English-speaking people know this, but there's a comic called Tintin.
Yeah, I think
everyone knows
Tintin,
it. But
yeah.
what people don't know in France, what they say about Tintin, it's popular from ages 7 to 77. That's what they say about Tintin.
Right.
Because 7-year-olds can like it in 77 because they're little
Yep.
things that everyone can pick up. This
Play on
song,
words,
Chacun fait, plaît, with the story that I just told, that it's a very dark story. Sex, drugs, pretty...
Bois de Boulogne, yeah.
Bois de Boulogne.
Yeah.
You're paying someone for sex, not getting it up,
Right.
blah, blah, blah. The kids loved it. They
Really?
had no idea what it was about. And obviously the people who could understand the lyrics, someone told me once, when I first heard that song, they didn't know it was going to be such a big hit. He said, I was in my car, I went around the block 3 times to hear what happens in the end. I mean, it was so big.
And then it's kind of like, like the movie Grease, right?
Oh, I love
So
it.
I watched that 100 times as a kid, and then I happened to watch it again as an adult. And I was like, whoa, that's really, there's a lot of sex jokes. all the way through it.
Innuendos that you didn't
innuendo.
get as a kid.
You don't even get it. You even laugh at it as a kid, or you just ignore it. And then
You
watch
don't
it
even
again, and the
realize.
whole movie's about sex.
It's so good.
Yeah.
But the thing is that one time someone told me this teacher said to me, because in France, I'm sure people who are listening to this podcast love French, and so
Every single one of them do.
yes, and
Yeah.
you should. You know how they do dictée. If you've ever taken French, what's a dictée? It's a spelling bee.
Right.
So, or you have to rewrite a big paragraph. This teacher came up to me. I think the kids might be, I don't know, 9, 10. She said, I'm really confused. I don't know what to do because my kids want me to use the song as dictée. And she's like going, I don't know what to do because, I'm not going to do it because for one thing, there's a lot of argot, a lot of slang.
Yeah.
Argot, it's called slang argot. And plus it's a little bit dark, so I'm not going to do it. But anyway.
Yeah.
So when you have a big hit like we did with Chacun fait, plaît, the record company said, we want you to do an album.
Right.
So that was a big challenge because the person who wrote the lyrics was in cinema. He'd written songs with his friend, but he'd never really done anything. So we said, okay, we have to write. And so we wrote an album, pretty much the same subject. I mean, sex, drugs, and rock and roll. The whole album is about it. But what was really sort of funny about us is that I was singing with someone, everyone obviously thought we were together, because when you see 2 people singing, we were cute, and everyone thought we were together. People didn't, a lot of the public sort of thought we were this cute couple. So when we continued with the album, we did one rap song, but we didn't do the same rap that everyone wanted us to do.
Right.
But we stayed on the same sort of subjects. So the album is basically Adam and Eve before and after the apple.
Right, and so that picture that you're looking at there, is you and him, topless, black and white, and the one on the back is you. That's based on that.
After the Diane de Poitiers. What was there's a picture.
She's pinching his nipple.
She's
guys.
pinching the nipple of her sister. In fact, that
That's
we
right,
find out.
right.
But anyway, the thing that's really amazing about this, I'm really proud, is that we were looking in an issue of Rolling Stone magazine, and there was Nastasia Kinski photographed naked by Richard Avedon, who was a really important 20th century photographer who photographed everyone from the Beatles to Charlie Chaplin to Marilyn Monroe to all the Warhol clan. He also did an amazing series on the American West, taking pictures of on a backdrop of just poor workers, and so he's really famous. He did that famous picture of Dovina with the elephants. He was one of the precursors in taking pictures of fashion photos in the streets of Paris, which was new. Anyway, so we wrote to him and like, oh, we want you to take our picture. And he was like, who are you and why should I take your picture? So we had to say, well, we've just sold,
Yeah.
He said, yes.
Fantastic.
Richard Avedon,
And now, and look at you now.
Voila. And so we went to New York and we did the picture.
That's
And so I'm really proud to have been photographed by someone so important.
So I'm going to take a picture of that. I'm
Okay.
going to put it on the website, theearfultower.com, so that you guys, while you're listening, I'll put a link in the show notes that you guys can go and look at exactly what we're talking about. But Valli, we've got a lot to talk about. I said Valli then. I went for the Australian
my
version.
name.
What I wanted to talk about as well. Firstly, you've worked on a book with another I could say friend of the show, Stephen Clark.
Absolutely, Stephen.
So the book is, but you've written it in French. So unless you guys speak French, it's maybe not something yet for them. So you've written it for the French audience, is that, am I right?
Yes, it's called British Invasion, Pop Save the Queen.
Right. And it's kind of cool that you guys, maybe we can sort of quickly dip into that you guys wrote a sort of dialogue book about...
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It was crazy because, I mean, I'm living in France. I've lived here since 1981. I got here, in May 1981 with Mitterrand. And why would someone ask me to write about British music in French? But I guess because I'm sort of a personality in
a
France.
way, it kind of makes sense.
I guess. But the fact is, so it was sort of like a command, like what they say in French is a command, someone commissioned.
Yes.
So someone commissioned me to do this book, and I was supposed to do it on my own, ghostwriter, and I was like, I had been on the radio for 25 years, so I can write, but I was a little worried about writing so much. So I said, wait a minute, why should we write with a ghostwriter? Let's have a conversation between someone who's exactly my age, who lived, the 60s music.
Yeah, because Stephen does a lot
Clark,
of music too.
Yeah, so I said, would you like to do it? And he said, of course. And so we wrote this thing in French together, which is kind of
it's
funny.
Kind of crazy that
it's totally crazy.
Yeah. I love that. I love that though. I think that's really cool.
Well, you should have seen it because we're both, quite talkative. So can you imagine I'm saying, okay, now I remember when I was, a kid and I saw the Beatles on Ed Sullivan's show, and then I moved to London for a year and I did this, I did that. And Stephen is, this is in French, and Stephen is furiously
typing. So you guys,
typing.
when you talk to Steve, if you called him right now, if we were to call him, would
English.
you speak in English?
Yeah.
With him? Yeah. Because his French is exceptionally good, isn't it?
He's got great French.
Yeah. Whose is better out of yours and his?
Oh, God, of course, mine.
Yeah, okay.
No, I think we both are pretty equivalent. I don't know if he knows as much slang as I do.
I don't think he's ever done a rap song that's sold
Wait,
2.5
maybe that's
million.
right. But in fact, he speaks impeccable French.
Yeah.
So the funny part was that he was typing when I was talking, and
Right.
then when we sent it to the publisher, the person to start putting it in form for the book, he was tearing his hair out because it was like, I don't know how many run-on sentences we did, like never a period, just and blah 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 blah.
Because you used to dialogue and
Right.
you dictated it. That makes sense. But there's another. I'm going to jump over now. Is that eucalyptus? That plant? There?
Yes.
That's lovely.
Thank you.
Sidetracked. George Eddy. George Eddy is another upcoming guest on this show, who I understand you know.
I know him because we both worked at Canal Plus.
Right. So this is an upcoming guest on the Eiffel Tower. George Eddy commentates the basketball and the football in French.
Well, the thing is about it,
France.
it was a cable station. Was one of the first cable stations it opened in 1984.
Right.
So I went to the inauguration, and then I worked there in 1985 on a TV show, and one of the things that they decided to do was show American football.
Yeah.
So George Eddy.
Yeah. George Eddy. Is that how it's
This is what he sounds like. You'd see the coming attraction. Football Américain sur Canal Plus. And in reality, he should have said Football Américain sur Canal Plus. But he is so well known for that.
Do you think he exaggerates? Or?
I don't know, because I had him on my show. I did a show on France Inter, which is the French NPR, one summer on America, called I Love USA, Moi Non Plus. And so I invited him on, and we spoke, obviously, French.
Yeah.
He definitely has a stronger accent than I do.
Right.
But maybe he hangs out with American people. I don't hang out with American people.
Do you know how he came on? Well, this is a whole other story.
Tell me.
He came on my radar because I was watching French guys doing basketball videos, and all the young French guys want to have him on their basketball YouTube videos, like shooting around. He's like a hero.
He is a hero because he brought over a sport that wasn't covered at all.
Wow.
That's one thing that Canal Plus did. They gave us access to things like American football and basketball.
Yeah.
So with his accent, it was like, immediately you can recognize it.
Do you have it? You can say hello. Maybe he's listening.
George, how are you? I miss you. I hope I hear from you after we've been on this famous Olivier G.
Maybe I
show.
I should speak French with a really strong Australian accent and do the same trick. You know?
Oh, honey, you'll become so famous. I mean, my people thought I was black when I sang this song because they said, "Oh, okay, she's got this really strong accent. It's rap, so she must be black." So it's true when you have an accent. Ben oui, exactly.
Yeah.
So
You've just done something that I also want to talk about. You said "mais oui." That was your natural reaction.
Yes.
To speak in French. So you've lived here for, who's
38.
counting? Hey, who's counting, right? A couple of decades. do you find that your mind is in French and that like when you're speaking to me now, do you have to consciously think about it, or like?
No, it depends because it's true, you never think that you'd lose your maternal language, but in fact it's not that you lose it, but I really, when I first came to France, everyone wanted to speak to me in English because at the time it was so different. You didn't have all the same opportunities to speak in English. I wanted to speak to me in English, and I wanted to learn French. But a lot of times, American people come to France and they want to find the American community, which I never did. I mean, I don't think I had an American friend. I think I lived here 20 years before I even had an American friend,
really?
just
Wow.
to let you know.
Yeah.
And not that I had a lot of French friends, because I had more, my best friend was Swedish, my other best friend was born in Cuba, even though she's grown up in France. I mean, I knew a lot of people, but not really a lot of Americans. So I do speak and work, especially in French.
Yeah.
So it's really my language, and I speak to my kids in French, even though when they were babies, I spoke to them in English, but my reaction is now speaking to them in French because they spoke to me in French because it was the survival language. But I must say, sometimes I realize I'll say like, oh, exactement, or mais oui, and I don't mean to be pretentious, it just comes out.
That's funny that you say that, because a lot of people would think, I mean, you've been here for several decades, but this idea of saying mais oui or exactement or whatever, it does, like, people would think, oh, she's, pretentious. But I think some people who even have been here for 6 months might have the same thing,
I don't know, but it's true, and especially because when I first got here, this success, selling all these records, came so quickly after I had gotten here. I came in May and in January 1982, because the Radio Libre, which were the pirate radios, all of a sudden had the right to admit. Is that the word? I mean, see, I don't even know the word. They had the right to broadcast.
Yeah.
Legally.
Yeah.
So, there was all of a sudden there was a lot of radios to do. The FM was born. We didn't have FM here, so I really learned how to speak French in like no time. When you have a job, because afterwards, once I stopped singing, I was on TV, and then I've been on the radio since 1992. So it's my job, and even though I interview a lot of American artists and stuff, I talk on the radio in French. So it's just innate. Although I must say, sometimes people say, "What do you think in French or in English?" And I guess both.
People often ask what one dreams in.
I definitely dream in both. I know sometimes I'll say really bad swear words, and I say them in English.
Because that's a reflex.
Oh
that's
my God.
interesting. The reflex answer to things.
Right. So
I dream in Japanese sometimes. I don't even speak Japanese.
Really?
Yeah, I don't know what's going on.
Oh my God.
I don't know what's going on.
Are you sure it's Japanese?
No, I don't know. But I know sometimes I'm having a dream and I'm like, this doesn't make sense. It's a different language. Well, I'll just sort of watch.
Well, also people tell me when I go to America, when they see me, they say, "Oh, you have a French accent." I said, "I don't have a French accent." And then I keep thinking, maybe it's because I speak so much French that I'll say, instead of Oliver's book, I'll say the Book of Oliver. Yeah. I mean, that's an example.
I get what you mean, because
it might be this
construction
of the sentences, but I do not speak. I know I do not have this kind of accent.
No. We need to talk. This is a podcast about Paris, so I'm going to ask you one question about Paris, which is not enough, really. I mean, I could talk to you for a lot longer. You'll have to be.
You just have to come back.
Exactly. You'll have to be a repeat guest.
All right.
Which is my
With
favorite
great
kind
pleasure.
of guest. Yes. Okay. So first question is. So I want to ask a question that I often ask people. Imagine that for some reason you're being deported back to America.
Deported is the worst word you could use.
I know, unfortunately.
Because I'm
isn't it?
thinking in French.
Oh, what does that mean in
And
French?
déporté are the Jewish people who were déportés to the...
Well, stop thinking in French for a second.
Okay.
Think in English.
I've been sent back.
No. You've stolen some bread and they're sending you out of France. And you have one last day in this city.
Okay.
And for some strange reason, they say you have to spend the whole day in one arrondissement. Which would it be?
Ooh, wow. Difficult question. Holy moly. Because I love Paris. I lived for 11 years in the 4th arrondissement. I actually lived on the river, right across from Ile Saint-Louis and Ile La Cité.
Cool.
So
That's nice. What? That's like the town hall.
I know.
Yeah?
So I was right next to. I was on Rue de l'Hôtel de Ville. Since I don't live there anymore, you can tell everyone the whole
Is that
world.
the street that's directly behind the Hôtel de Ville?
It's behind Hôtel de Ville, and it goes. There's a place called Cité des Arts where Gainsbourg used to live, who's one of our most famous.
Wow, that is nice that you were living there.
Yeah, so I was living there,
Yeah.
right on the river. So every day I would watch the barges, and I would look at Notre Dame and
Yep.
Ile Saint-Louis. So that's the 4th arrondissement.
Yep.
Ile Saint-Louis is the 4th.
Yep, I
But
think it's
not-
half and half. There's something weird about it.
Oh, really? I've never heard that.
Yeah, it's an administrative thing.
Well, there's Ile la Cité that is not the 4th. Maybe you're thinking of Ile la Cité.
Who knows?
It would have to be. I'm thinking, even though it's changed dramatically, and the poor mayor of Paris is getting herself beaten up because she's decided to close some expressways. But I think maybe, it would be looking at the river and maybe walking doing the whole perimeter of Ile Saint-Louis, because that's where I walked my kids when they were in strollers.
It's lovely down
and I
there.
did the whole
Yeah.
Ile Saint-Louis, and I used to. My son was literally raised in the sandbox right underneath Notre Dame, which is now burned.
Yeah.
So I think. Since I have to choose, and you're so mean, and you're making me have to think of this terrible nightmare that I have to leave Paris.
Well,
it would have to be on the river Seine, on the Seine River, on the banks, just because there's a life and the color of the water changes, the sky is there, there are bridges. It's just a beautiful part.
Do you ever get that? It's a nice answer. Well done. But do you ever get that feeling when one of those barges come under the bridge that you're standing on, full of sand? Do you ever feel like jumping in? Sometimes I get
No,
that
but that's a good
Jason
idea.
Bourne
I'm too much of a chicken. I'm not Jason
Wouldn't it be
Bourne.
amazing though to do it once?
It would be kind of cool, but it would have
On
to
your
be
last day in Paris, you could do it.
Jello.
You don't need to get deported if you get taken down the river. Anyway, that was a really good answer and a very intriguing chat. So thank you very much for being a guest on the Eiffel Tower.
Merci beaucoup.
I like that you answered in French too.
7h du mat, j'ai des frissons. Je claque des dents et je monte le son. Sur le lit de mes draps bleus froissés, c'est insoumis.
So there you have it. There was my conversation with Valli, lovely lady. I hope that you guys enjoyed that conversation. As promised, I'm going to do a little bit from French today, the audiobooks where I'm learning French, or where I'm improving my French, I should say. It feels a bit better to say it like that, doesn't it? Where I'm improving my French rather than learning. Anyway, we'll talk about that in a second. I want to read out an email that I got, as I often do, a bit of Gmail. G of the double E variety, Gmail. And this one's from Lindsay Harvard, who just signed up on Patreon. And when people sign up, I send them a little message. I say, hey, oh, there's the church bells. Speaking of feeling like you're in Paris with me. 1 o'clock, in case you're counting. So I sent a little email. How'd you find out about the show? Thanks for signing up, that kind of thing. And I liked her response. She said, I'm not going to read the whole thing. It's a little bit long, but she fell in love with Paris after visiting from Atlanta, Georgia, and hopes to return in 2020. I love podcasts and found out about the Eiffel Tower through a Google search on podcast about Paris. I absolutely love it. It's taken me back to that special place every time I listen. I signed up on Patreon to support the quality content you give now twice every week. I've also fallen in love with Lena's shoe line and send my husband pictures, hoping he will get the hint for my next birthday. Thanks for reaching out and for the Eiffel Tower. From Lindsay Harvard. Lindsay, firstly, Lindsay's husband, if you're listening, and to all you other listeners, she's referring to my wife who makes shoes. And Mr. Lindsay Harvard, get the hint. Get the hint. Check it out. You guys can follow Lena online at Parisian Postcards on Instagram. But no, really, I appreciate that kind message and the support. And thanks to all of you guys who sign up on Patreon. I've said it 100 times, but if it wasn't for you guys, I would have given up on this show a long time ago. And it's thanks to you that I keep going. So, for all you supporters, as I said at the start, I'm going to be going out to Giverny and Monet's Garden on Wednesday. I think the weather's going to be a little bit bad, but it should be fun. All that you know what? When it's raining and you're out at Monet's Gardens, if you look through like a rainy bus window, I kind of feel like it'll look like an impressionist painting. So, maybe rain is a good thing. But stay tuned for that. Otherwise, follow on Instagram for a little behind the scenes. But a little word from the show's sponsor, French Today. So firstly, FrenchToday.com/earful6 if you are listening to this in June. That'll get you a further 10% discount on top of whatever discount they might be running at the moment. So you'll make a saving and they'll know that their partnership with me is working. Now, what I wanted to read out to you from today, I sort of went back a little bit. I met up with Camille recently, this week, to record an episode. And she was saying, feel free to go back in time, share some earlier stuff. And that's what I did today. I figured something that I stumbled upon the other day was apologizing for being late. I realized I didn't really know the best way to say I'm late or I'm early or I'm on time. And so I happened to stumble upon that today. And I just wanted to teach you. So here's how they go. Okay, so if you're late, you say, je suis en retard. Je suis en retard. And if you say it, I can play it.
Je suis en retard.
Did you hear that? The way that Camille says, je suis en retard. Je suis en retard. And that's how it works. Repeat, repeat, repeat. Je suis en retard. Je suis en retard. Or if you want to say it really basically, je suis en retard. And that means you're late. I hopefully won't be using that one this week, but this one I do want to use. When you're running on time, and in Camille's example, in the study guide I'm looking at now, she says, I'm perfectly on time. Sounds a bit like Mary Poppins, doesn't it? Je suis parfaitement à l'heure. I'm perfectly on time. Je suis parfaitement à l'heure. Practically perfect in every way. So my goal this week is to arrive on time to something and to text someone or to say to someone that I'm perfectly on time, on the hour, à l'heure. And then the last one, I wouldn't know how this feels, but it's when you're early, you say, je suis en avance. Je suis en avance. Je suis en avance. And you might notice that little liaison. The word je suis, you don't usually pronounce the S at the end unless the next word begins with a vowel. So je suis en avance. But je suis parfaitement à l'heure. So there you go, a little taste, a bit of an earlier level introduction to France, to French. But if you're interested in learning French, I would recommend that you go and do as I do and use the French Today audiobook. So frenchtoday.com/earful6. That'll work for June. If you're going to do it in July, we'll figure out that when we get to it. But there you go, French Today. That's a good way to learn French. That's what I'm doing, and that's what I recommend that you do. Now, you heard in the episode with Valli that I've got an upcoming episode with Georges Eddy, the American basketball commentator and Super Bowl and Olympics. Cool interview there. He told me he's met with Michael Jordan 100 times, so you can imagine how excited I was about that. But also, I'm going to do an episode on the Monet's Garden and Giverny and that experience. So keep your ears peeled for that. Thank you for listening to the Earful Tower. You want to make my day? Tell your friend about it. Nudge him on the shoulder. I'm doing it here. Nudge them with your elbow. Have you heard about the Earful Tower? And then get them reading. Get them listening. And speaking of reading, join the book club. I'm halfway through The Paris Wife at the moment. It's free to join on Facebook. There's about 550 people in that group talking about books about France. So if that's your kind of thing, go and check it out. As for me, you'll hear from me again on Thursday. Until then, au revoir.